Good evening and welcome to the broadcast. This is an edition of Pundit's Night. 2 months in power is the self-styled hustler government delivering for hustlers. We debate that on Pundit's Night as we ponder on the state of the nation. I am Abu Bakr Abdullahi. Welcome to the broadcast. As always, remember you can be part of this discussion. Send us a message on 22047. The hashtag to use is Pundit's Night. Just a reminder of our guests, Justina Wamae and David Kiplagat. Thank you for making time for us tonight. Justina, perhaps let me start with you. Who do I refer to you as tonight? Former deputy leader of the Roots Party, former presidential running mate, or Justina who?
My name is Justina Wamae.
Yes.
But I was not a deputy party leader. You know, there are party structures. I was never in the party structure. Mm-hmm. So I'm a former running mate of that party. Mm-hmm. Yes. All
right, Mheshimiwa David Kiplagat, so Member of Parliament, thank you for your time as well tonight. Perhaps
thank you.
Let's start from 60 days of the hustler government in power. What are the hits and misses in your view?
Thank you very much, and also thank you for the invite tonight. To start with, I think the hustler government, we can give it 98%. For the 60 days that we have been in power, first of all, you can imagine the situation we found ourselves in, and since we don't want to complain, as usual, when you are starting to build, you have to start from the structure. So for the 60 days and maybe up to the end of this year, mm-hmm. we are building on the structure. And building on the structure, you cannot just start shooting before you aim and you strategically position yourself. So
you say 98%. This is a country facing insecurity, both in its capital and outside counties of Baringo and the likes. This is a country facing the worst drought in 40 years. You rank the government's 2 months agenda as 98%. Isn't that not an extremely high percentage?
Of course, some of the calamities that is facing the country are not our own creation. So mm-hmm. you don't say that we came up with famine. Famine is a natural calamity that we found ourselves in. What I was saying is why we are giving ourselves 98% is that everything is on course. Now we have the cabinet secretaries in office. We are finalizing on the accounting officers, that is the principal secretaries. We are working to save our all 300 billion from the recurrent expenditure, that is by saving from travels, things like going to hotels for seminars. So that 300 billion, first of all, it will reduce the cap. We know we are a very indebted nation. Uh-huh. We are paying around 1.4 trillion. So that savings will go a long way, both in funding the hustler fund and both in making sure that at least we are self-sustaining going into the future. And
despite the troubles facing the country, you will still rate it at 98%?
Yes.
All right, let me get to Justina Wamae.
Yes.
In your view, what are the hits and the misses so far of the 60 days hustler government power period?
I speak from a customer feedback perspective,
Okay.
And your clients are the people who comment on social media every day. And they're saying that even you, when you put a post for TV47, someone is always asking you, how will this lower the cost of living? So Kenyans are feeling like there was so much expectation and they haven't been delivered. Kenyans are feeling like in terms of the cabinet, 50%, 50-50 gender was not achieved. Mm-hmm. Kenyans are also feeling in terms of the drought, they're asking where is the strategic reserve for grains? So Kenyans are not happy, and they believe it was partly because of the expectations they had of the government, and they're still questioning what is the government doing. In fact, for the Hustler Fund, they are saying, now you're telling us that there will be a cost. Why didn't you tell us before during the campaign? Mm-hmm. So in my opinion, the feedback from the Kenyans is that they are not happy and they're feeling demotivated already.
And Justina, when you say they are not happy, realistically, were Kenyans in their rightful minds expecting an instant solution to some of the problems?
Do you know our Kenyans are, let me say we are unique. Mm-hmm. Kenyans are also comparing Liz Truss from the UK, that mm-hmm. she resigned after 45 days in power. Mm-hmm. So they are feeling like our democracy has gotten there. So I believe Kenyans are not being honest with themselves. The government in place won. The government in place had their own strategy of winning the elections. So I believe it's time for Kenyans to also give the government of the day time to deliver. So I think the campaign mood had taken them over.
All right,
I think just to repeat what Wamae, she has said, that we can compare ourselves with the Truss as the Prime Minister for UK. That's a different narrative altogether, because you know very well Truss came with a package of economic stimulus package, which backfired seriously. And when everything was not working, she had no otherwise but to step aside. But for ours is we have not found ourselves in such a scenario, because our policies in the long run, because what you need to realize is from our bottom-up approach, first we needed money, and I've told you by end of December we'll have saved 300 billion. We wanted only 50 billion to jumpstart the Hustlers Fund. So part of now the 250 million that will remain will go into reducing the debt that we are currently paying. Because you can imagine if we are going to do more. And
let me interject you there, Mheshimiwa. You're making a case for a government that needs time. That is ordinarily should be the way. But this is a government, and there were promises publicly made. Mimi, once I'm sworn in, hiyo kitabu nikiweka chini, we will bring down the cost of living. Was that just politics of it?
I think let us be real. You don't run a government through magical means. You are not a magician. First of all, you know very well the government is not well formed up to, because we have just finished swearing in the cabinet. The cabinet is in place, but now the accounting officers are not in place. And McHugh, for you to be able to execute anything in government, you need principal secretary, like principal secretary for finance. If you don't have a principal secretary of finance, for example, and there are quite a number of draft of regulations that you need to pass, there are quite a number of things you need to approve. So unless that office is in place, so we are still in the initial inception stages of forming the government, and that is why I'm saying for this period up to end of December, give us that grace period to set ourselves, to set the structure, to set the framework. Then those questions now should start now flowing in January.
Justina,
yes.
On the 9th of August, you are a potential deputy president. Had your ticket won, you would be a deputy president now. Observing what the Kenya Kwanza government and the Hustler government is doing in this 2 months period, how different would you do things if you had won that election?
First and foremost, we would have focused on agriculture. Our first agenda was legalization of marijuana. So we would have grown industrial hemp so that in the 4 months coming in, we would have been, harvesting. Of course, we have the land that is government land. That is where we would have done it. Even Kulalu Galana would have been a pilot project. So for one, that is something we would have shown the youth that we are implementing by making them useful, by creating employment. That said, I believe because the ticket that won was the Kenya Kwanza ticket, Kenyans owe the government some patience, because they are the ones who chose this government. The government did not come into power by themselves. So I believe Kenyans need to give this government time as they are requesting. Also been saying that they got into government as Mheshimiwa, they say ground ilikuwa different. Ground was different. They found 93 million. So I believe Kenyans should give the government time. But as it is, we can see even the emergence of crime. That goes to show that Kenyans are now feeling, how do I put it? Kenyans are feeling disappointed. Because in fact, even some camera people I met were telling me, we no longer work with our cameras in town because you're scared of being attacked. So I think Kenyans are feeling disappointed. Maybe it was expectation, maybe it was campaigns. But again, they say when a man is wooing a woman, they also have to use their own strategies. Probably it was the same case.
Justina, I said you are a potential deputy president. You are then a party member of the Roots Party, which you have since resigned. Some members of that party accused you of being a darling to the Kenya Kwanza then political formation, questioning your loyalty to the party then. Your response?
My response is that the party leader already was a darling to Azimio. He did it publicly. I was not a darling to Kenya Kwanza. I was merely speaking the truth and saying the election was free and fair. What Kenyans need to realize, if you're asking for good leadership, you must also ensure that your leaders are accountable. I had promised the party members that I'm going to fight for Roots Party agenda, not the Azimio agenda. So they should not blame me the moment I'm speaking the truth that we did not have agents on the ground. I'm speaking on the truth that Kenya Kwanza won. Yes, as Roots Party. So if speaking the truth was seen that I'm a darling to Kenya Kwanza, so be it. But one thing I said is that leaders, you're supposed to be accountable. You're supposed to have a stand. And that is what I fought for.
All right, Mheshimiwa David Kiplagat, of course you are from the Kenya Kwanza side of the political matrix in this discussion, and often there are claims that the president and his deputy are yet to move from the campaign mode. Often you hear them talking of what happened before the campaigns, and in particular the deputy president Rigathi Gachagua, who is on record at times harshly using some phrases to the opposition.
Okay, maybe before that, I would like to ask a question to my fellow panelists.
Yes.
Is there a country which has developed through marijuana? One that we know of. That it's a developed country. We know all the developed countries.
Yes.
Is there one that has developed through marijuana?
Marijuana in the US, in Zambia, in Mozambique, in Malawi, is a pilot. They're piloting. What you're advocating for at the time, Mheshimiwa, is that we had gynecologists 30 years ago, but they have moved and enhanced their practice. So we were saying that government should enhance their leadership and be creative in terms of funding their projects. So we were fighting for competitive advantage because we have arable land, we have labor. So our idea was that we move away from the normal taxing and debt to create funding for our projects away from debt and taxes.
Okay, at least you agree.
As you answer my question.
Yeah. As I answer that.
Is your deputy party leader and your party leader, are they yet to move from the campaign mode?
I think we have passed the campaign mode for sure. And for example, when you go to a public rally, and I've told you we are the formative stages of ensuring the government is in place. The marathon will start in January once everything is in place. If you have gone to a public rally, you cannot go there and remain mum. You need to say something. So anything that is said as if we want to blame somebody for the current problems that are there, we are not complaining. We are here to work for Kenyans. We are here to deliver for Kenyans. And when you go to a public rally, at least you entertain the citizens. So you should not give it a lot of weight of what is said there, because it also depends on at that time what those people wanted to hear. You can see them clapping.
You entertain them.
Yeah, you entertain them as you want.
Justina, often the president and his deputy in public rallies lately talking of still as though they are politicking. And these are claims made by the opposition, telling the government to move on. Yes, you have won the election.
I believe the citizen of today is well informed. The citizen of today has so much data, social media. You know, we are here discussing politics. So the citizen of today is feeling like they're still in the campaign mode. And in fact, I found there's someone who was saying that it seems the government is clueless from the point of view of the citizen. So Mheshimiwa, when I say customer feedback, it is the Kenyans who are feeling, general feeling of the Kenyans is that they're campaigning. But as again, Mheshimiwa is saying, you cannot remain mum. So for Kenyans, you need to understand there's politics and there's leadership.
So maybe,
Justina, this is a duo, not to come to their defense, but this is a duo who publicly said they were frustrated. Their attempts to get to the offices they currently hold were frustrated. You wouldn't expect them to give up easily on that, isn't it? They'll have to hit back probably.
Maybe just
let's just
what I'd say is that being frustrated. That is life, you know. There are many of us have gone through many frustrations. We understand their take and what they're giving Kenyans about their frustrations. But the Kenyan person of today, or the citizen, is feeling like, no, you won the election, please move on. Actually, it's not the media or politicians who are telling the government to move on. It's the Kenyans themselves who are saying, move on. So as Mheshimiwa is saying that as you you're entertaining Kenyans, it's being misconstrued that you're still politicking.
Maybe there's a confusion that government works in offices, and most of the deliveries are done at the boardrooms. And when we are in boardrooms, we are not politicking. We are seriously working. And one example I want to tell you is that when we came in, the pending bills, especially I can even take one department like roads, the pending bills for roads alone is about 100 billion. And within these 60 days, we have been able to find a way of getting the money to pay those pending bills. And one of it is that a bond was treasury bond was released to the market by end of December. All pending bills at the Department of Roads will have been paid, and the projects that had been shelved will now proceed to completion. So it is we are really working. So you should not look at what happens in a public rally or in a public gathering as if that is where policies are made. Policies are made in offices, policies are made in boardrooms, and we have been working, and I can tell you, both the president, the deputy president, and the CSS, they are waking up at 4 and sleeping at 2 to work for this country. So
Justina.
In fact, I have a message to Mheshimiwa. Today there were some contractors, when they saw meeting you, they told me to give you a message. How comes on Eastern Bypass, the Chinese companies are continuing with their construction? It means maybe they are fully paid by the previous government. So the request to these local contractors, they were saying, even them, they want to be really considered in business, you know. Their lorries pay inspection fees, the others just come, they are being exempted so many things. So to have a level playing field, Mheshimiwa, they were requesting that when you're coming up with bills, please consider the local contractors so that they can continue even building this country.
Yeah, I think what I had explained is that now we have money to pay all the contractors so that they can start working, both whether it is international or local. So there is money. Maybe what you look at Chinese, you see Chinese, when they sign a contract, they sign 2 contracts. They sign one for the actual contract and also another one for refinancing. And they always get their refinancing through Exim Bank. So that is why you can see them, although the government has no money, but they are able to proceed with it. They are able to proceed with the project. So maybe that is something our local contractors needs to work on, so that at least if we can get all our savings, and that is why we are very particular on making sure that Kenyans save as much as possible. Because what we are relying on loans from China is that they are saving, and from China they are saving up to 60%. As we are in a single digit saving, so you can see where we are. So if we can get our pensions to work, if we can get our savings to work, then we can actually, our contractors can actually get where to borrow money for them to be able to execute their business and their construction.
All right, we are discussing the state of the nation. We have a lot to talk about, the politics of it, the drought situation in the country, and the security or lack of it in the country. Let's talk of the drought situation in the country. Justina, 3.5 million Kenyans affected, suffering from drought, in dire need of aid. Year in, year out, we see the government distributing relief food as though it is a norm. How does Kenya get out of this?
I believe this government should take this as a lesson, that they are going to be the government that will stop the issue of giving food or Kenya changaing money every time for farming and drought-stricken Kenyans. What I think is that, one, I'm happy because they say they're going to introduce GMOs which are resilient to the weather changes. I'm also happy that even the BT cotton, which is GMO forecast, is something that is going to create employment. But what we should do is focus on the strategic reserve for food. Food security is one of the securities that we should look into. Kenyans should feed themselves. So one, when you're focusing on giving fertilizer, let us have a wholesome approach to fertilizer. Is not the only input cost. We have the seeds, we have the labor, we have leasing cost, we have the water, the rain, and getting water to water the plants. So what I want the government to do is, one, this should be a lesson. Two, look at the wholesome approach so that they can have policy interventions from the production to the marketing aspect of it. Three, strategic reserve for food, and also focus on NCPB. What happened such aspects, what happened to such things. So my take is that as we are giving fertilizer to Kenyans, let us understand that there's a whole value chain of it all, from the beginning of it, planting and the labor cost, to the marketing part of it, and even our excess. Even in the Bible we saw Joseph keeping, saving this for 7 years of drought. So let us be forward thinking that the climate will not always be favorable. So how can we feed ourselves?
All right,
I think on that it's very important that we look for a long-term solution. First of all, as we had said, there is something that happens in the previous government that we really don't know whether they had forgotten about how to run a government. You know very well, part and
isn't that not part of the blame game of?
Okay, this one I have to say because it is something that we have found and it cannot be addressed right now. We have the strategic food reserve, and food security is one of the components for any country to prosper, that you need to ensure about yourself at any given time you are food secure. And that is why the Constitution lists the strategic food reserve as the most important component when it comes to food security. This strategic food reserve, initially they had a budget of 14 billion. That 14 billion, they were supposed to buy around, because at any given moment they need to have around 4 million bags of maize. So what the previous government and the Minister for Agriculture did, the 14 million, instead of ensuring that there is a strategic food reserve as it were, that money was used to subsidize the unga. Was it the unga subsidy? You remember the bogus unga subsidy, just close to election, which was around three weeks to an election, and people were doing to tell them that now unga has been reduced from 230 to 100 shillings. And those unga, if I went to Eldoret, you could not find one. There was no unga for 100 bob. If you found one, you will line, and then you have to buy goods worth 1,000 shillings for you to be given one packet of unga. So it was not sustainable. And what happens is the minister used 14 billion to subsidize the unga, and that is where now the money for the strategic food reserve disappeared. And as we talk now, there is no strategic food reserve. The 4 million bags are not there.
And whereas Mheshimiwa, the government has insisted, the Kenya Kwanza government, that it will not subsidize consumption, but rather support the farmers by distributing subsidized fertilizers. The argument of the previous CS, whom you are faulting, has been Kenyans are in dire need of food. What do? Do you give them fertilizer or you give them food?
I think you didn't get me. Strategic food reserve is not subsidy. It is food security. Are you food secure? And it is determined that at any given moment, the government needs to have in its strategic food reserve store, they need to have 4 million bags. So that in case of famine like the relief that we are facing right now, they'll go to the strategic food reserve, then they now distribute that maize from the government stores. It is not a strategic food. It is not it is not a subsidy, but it is making sure that we are food secure. That component was misused, and when it was misused, it is that currently we needed more, but the stores are empty. Maybe what we need to tell ourselves is that what do we have to do to make our country food secure? You have traveled, you have gone to countries like Israel. Israel, there is no rain, but they are food secure. You have gone to countries like Dubai, United Arab Emirates. There is no rain, but they are food secure. The component that we need is water. And the only way we can be food secure as a country is to invest so much in dams and to invest where to harvest water so that that water can be used for irrigation. So if we are going to do irrigation, at least I can assure you these things of dealing with famine in this country will be a thing of the past.
Justina, we are talking of more than 3.5 million Kenyans affected. If you look at the distribution of the affected Kenyans, you look at counties largely in the northern part of the country, Turkana, Mandera, Wajir, partly Garissa, Tana River equally. These are counties receiving billions of shillings in annual allocation through the devolved systems. Where is the mismatch?
The mismatch is that leaders do not want to resonate with the common wananchi challenges. The mismatch is that leaders do not want to be creative in terms of doing their projects. In fact, when Mheshimiwa says about Israel, it's a challenge. I've even seen in South Sudan, there's a company that has been contracted to grow hay. It is dry, but they're using the River Nile to grow their hay that they're selling to Israel and others, and Dubai and other countries. So I think what we need is Kenyans also to come up and ask their leaders that these are the projects we feel are important. So as a Kenyan, please avail yourself for public participation. But also my request is that many Kenyans feel that during the week, they are not available for public participation. So most of the projects that the counties push end up not being to satisfy their needs. So one of the things is that Kenyans, you need to ensure that your leadership understand the plight. Mheshimiwa was telling me when we were sitting with him that sometimes Kenyans are saying they call their governors and governors do not pick their calls. So you end up calling an MP who you feel is closer to you. So our leaders elected, please avail yourself, listen to Kenyans, have an open door policy so that the Kenyans on the ground can tell you exactly what they're feeling and how they can chip in growing the county agenda and also ensuring that they are food secure. But one thing I also want to add, the average age of a farmer in Kenya is 60 years old. That where does that leave the 18 to 35-year-old, the youth, who are, most of them are coming to the cities to say they are unemployed? How can they be incorporated back into the counties, be made use of in terms of being farmers, growing, focusing on the food security agenda of a specific county? The moment we make use of the youth, make them active, make them feel that they're contributing to the agenda of a county per se, then we'll be using their labor to ensure that we are food secure.
Mheshimiwa, some of the counties are receiving billions of shillings. Counties hard hit, worst hit in fact, where people are struggling to get a glass of water. Where is the mismatch?
Yeah, I think the mismatch from my experience as a speaker of the Uasin Gishu County Assembly is most of the money goes to recurrent expenditure, and if you look at most counties, they have a ballooning wage bill, so you will get the budget out of, if you are to give maybe 10 billion to a county, maybe 7 billion will go to to wages, and then apart from that, maybe another 2 billion will go to that recurrent expenditures, to fuel cars and things like that, and then maybe around 2 billion will just remain for development, which is actually, if you look at the dire situation of what the county needs and the amount of money it has remained, you realize it can do very little. So we need to harmonize and we need to restructure how our counties need to perform so that we can reduce on recurrent expenditure and we increase on developmental expenditure. That's the only way we can make those billions that we are sending to counties into meaningful, to do meaningful things that the people can realize that at least the counties are working. But otherwise, are currently constituted, we have counties that have become employment bureaus where everyone wants to be employed, and I can tell you it is not easy, because when you are campaigning, everyone expects to be given a job, and especially in those northeastern part. I was being told a story by I think it was Wajir's speaker. When he won, then a whole clan came with 340 people and say that we are not going here until you employ all these youths, and they are harmed. So at the end of the day, you just have to bargain a mayor, and he took half of them. So, and the same thing maybe to Turkana. So you can see what is happening in the northern frontiers is things that we have no control of. So unless we really restructure, and that is why we needed CDF most, because CDF is low on recurrent expenditure and maybe 99% on developmental expenditure.
And it has quite attracted a hit on the CDF fund. We will come to that. Justina, is it my understanding then that money is not the problem, we get the priorities wrong as a country?
I think the challenge is that the only place where you can make money in Kenya is public service. That you have a job in the government, you're permanent and pensionable. So I think the challenge is that we need to engage private sector so that we can also grow the private sector, so that people can look at other ways. Apart from being in government, you can be in private sector. In fact, I'm hoping that one day government will have roundtable meetings often, often if it's the MPs, they meet the private sector, if the president, just to understand. And it should be meetings that are often, so they can understand where are we, what do you want to achieve. And what you want to achieve, it's industrialization and employment. Of course, money is there, it goes to the wrong. Those are issues that, they are within our control, because the only place in Kenya now you can make money is public sector. So when we empower the private sector.
When you say, Justina, the only place you can make money is the public sector.
Yes.
You mean through making money legally or illegally?
Both, because one is through employment, tenders, knowing someone, connections, wash, all those things. Public sector is the only place where you can be rich very fast. But private sector has been put down in terms of taxes. They do not have, employment. They cannot employ. They don't have capacity. Power is expensive. So that is where you see our private sector in terms of industrialization cannot be able to employ many people. And that is where most of us want to run into politics, so that at least we are assured of an income and a good life.
Mheshimiwa, should the region's largest economy, Kenya, be still grappling with cases of Kenyans dying out of hunger?
It is a dire situation that as a country, having gotten independence, now we are going to around 50-something years, and we are still being ravaged by famine is actually regrettable. And I think we need now to set policies that are long term, so that we can ensure that famine become a thing of the past. And I've told you, the only way to eliminate hunger is to get water. So we need to tell ourselves, what can we do so that we make sure that every household can be supplied with water, both for purposes of home use and also for purposes of irrigation. And I think our president is very clear that we are going to set up around 100 major dams, so that we can be able to make lands that were not arable, so that they can be arable, and we increase our food production. And this has been done. If you look at Kolana Kulalu project, it was a well thought project. Leaders went to Israel, they saw how it was working. They gave it to the Israelis to run for a short while, and then the whole thing became a bit of politics there, and the thing is not picking. But if we can actually run things professionally and make things to work, and we do irrigation farming, then I believe the issues of famine will be eliminated.
Justina, Mheshimiwa hinted of CDF and why members want the National Government Constituency Development Fund back. Given that the counties are allocated money in billions of shillings, why should members of parliament be given hundreds of millions?
In fact, that is a question I've been asking myself. And I've met many Kenyans who are saying that, one, if someone did not campaign for Mheshimiwa or they did not vote for Mheshimiwa, they will not benefit from CDF. That is the general feeling of Kenyans. But when you look at CDF, Kenyans are asking that in Schedule 4 of the Constitution, we are told that the separation of functions, national government and county government. When an MP gives you bursary in terms of CDF, and the governor is doing the same, and the MC is still doing the same, I feel there's duplication of service, duplication of activities. I should think that the money should just be left with either national government or the county government. And what MPs should focus on is, legislation, oversight and representation on issues like, for example, come up with a foreign policy on how our Kenyans are treated in the Middle East. That is something that they are required by law in Schedule 4. Another thing, you're told that the national defense and the use of national defense services. So I feel that the MPs should be happy that the burden of dispersing and giving bursaries has been lifted from their backs. They should now focus on giving us quality bills that are well thought out. If it is about food security, they realize that fertilizer is not the only component that is required. There are other issues like irrigation. So I feel they should be happy. Their role has been, the burden has been lifted. Theirs is to legislate.
But Justina, is it not the justification from the end of the members of parliament that this is the money that touches the common mwananchi?
That is what...
To an extent, citing examples of numerous classrooms built using the CDF money, numerous students whose fees have been paid through CDF money.
And also the governor also has their own money that and bursaries that they're giving. So I feel instead of duplicating services, the MPs should even be focusing more on how the governor is pushing for education, quality structures of schools, quality education. So my thought is that the CDF that was there during Kibaki's time was good, but now a new constitution came, and the constitution now says that separation between the levels of government, national and county. So for a Kenyan, I'm talking about a common mwananchi who feels that if I did not vote for Mheshimiwa, I will not benefit. So they would rather that the money goes back to the county and they can get services from either national government or the county government.
Okay.
All right, Mheshimiwa, there's quite a confusion in the public gallery of what the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court, ordered as unconstitutional. It was the CDF Act of 2013 that the Supreme Court ruled as being unconstitutional. The NDCDF Act of 2015 is the one that has a case in a court of law, right?
Yeah. Maybe to set the record straight, because I think there has been miscommunication and handling of the information as to regard to the status of CDF. So maybe I can set the record straight as the shoe wearer who knows where the shoe pinches. CDF, NGCDF is still there. What was at the Supreme Court, it was a lengthy litigation on CDF Act 2013.
13, yes.
And that litigation led to NGCDF, that is the National Government CDF, NGCDF 2015, which is currently the one we are using. So NGCDF is there. The one that was declared unconstitutional is the one anyway that was not being used, that is the CDF Act 2013. I think that is very clear. And for just to bring you to speed, you should know very clearly that we are setting up the CDF committees. We passed them in Parliament last week. They will be gazetted this week, and the rollout of programs for CDF will start now. Will start in annex from December. So there is no confusion as to the status of CDF. So let us cool our feet. The only thing we wanted to sort on the amendment that we are currently doing, because you know, in this republic, there are quite a number of civil societies that like to challenge everything into. We have become a very legalistic nation. I'm sorry to say so. So to safeguard those litigations so that we can actually concentrate more on serving our people, is that we now want to entrench NGCDF in the constitution, so that the issue of saying it is unconstitutional is not used. So we are going to entrench it in the constitution, and that is why now the legislative proposal is currently in Parliament.
Mheshimiwa, with respect, you are a member of Parliament.
I want to finish.
Let me ask you this. You are a member of Parliament. You are saying there is no confusion. A section of your colleagues in the National Assembly are threatening to strike over these funds.
Now that is another...
You're playing it low, isn't it?
That's another confusion. That's another confusion. You see, what we were saying, for the first time, there has been a delay in the disbursement of CDF funds. So we are just telling the government to quicken the disbursement of NGCDF funds, because you know very well in January, our kids need to go back to school. most families that are very vulnerable are depending on CDF to make sure that they take their kids to school. So it is only the issue of time. It was not because that the Supreme Court did ABCD, now we are threatening to go on strike. I think
it's more than the question of time, isn't it? When the current Treasury CS, Njuguna Ndung'u, was being vetted by the Parliamentary Appointment Committee, he was asked of how he will release this given the court ruling. He was very clear. He said he will consult on what the law says. And I think there seems to be a problem.
And I think maybe because I'm inside and you are outside, you are in that misnomer. Maybe I can clear your mind so that you have clear of thoughts. I've told you NGCDF is in place. The only thing that is delaying is the release of funds. And the release of funds is delaying partly because the CDF committee were not in place. But from last week, if you have followed the order paper in Parliament, we have been passing those committees. So I think now that the committees are going to be gazetted, once gazetted, then the money will be released.
Justina wants to react to
No, may I finish? Just to clear your thoughts, is that the Attorney General has already released on the clarification, if that is what you wanted to hear on the status of the CDF. So the only challenge that is there on the NGCDF is the court that is currently at the High Court, and that one we are going to overcome by entrenching it in the Constitution, and that has
through an amendment.
All right. So on clear those, maybe before that, a very good example. You know, sometimes we can say maybe this fund should have gone where. We become very theoretical. I'm telling you, I've been a speaker of a county assembly. I've worked in the in a county government. I can tell you, if we were even to pick 1 billion, 1 billion additional fund to the county, if we were to pick 1 billion to the county, and I want you to hear this one properly, is 70% of that funds will actually immediately go to recurrent expenditure. So this 1 billion, I'm taking for example our Uasin Gishu County. We have 7 constituencies. We receive on an average on CDF 1 billion. So if we were to take that 1 billion and give it to the county government, 700 million will immediately go to recurrent expenditure. Now you will remain with, may I finish? Now you will remain with 300 million. 300 million. Now each sub-county or each constituency will now receive maybe from the county government 50 million instead of the 150 million that we are receiving. So unless you want to start now, so it is better, you know, they are saying you don't put your eggs into one basket. If this one fails and this one can work, at least you have something that works.
All right.
And something that is...
This is one of the rare moments where both sides of Parliament are in agreement that these funds need to be released.
I feel because they agree, but Kenyans from where they sit, some of them are saying, if I did not vote for Mheshimiwa David, I will not benefit. And that is why they are saying these funds or the service of the money should go back to the counties. But one thing I want to ask Mheshimiwa, anchoring it...
Even also the governor, if you did vote for the governor...
Right.
But you know, governor...
Let her make a point.
Governor is doing it through the executive, you know, how Kenyans see it. Mheshimiwa, you know, I'm giving you what Kenyans think. But... as we say it as it is, Mheshimiwa, this money, as a government, you're saying that you want to cut costs, force out duplication. From the eye of Kenyans, Kenyans are feeling that this money is just going to benefit the cronies of the MPs. And you know why Kenyans are happy it is going? Because they feel not all of us benefit. So how do you assure Kenyans, once you anchor the CDF in law, that they are going to benefit free and fair?
I think let's be realistic. I think Wamae, you are becoming too theoretical. If you go to, I don't know which constituency you come
Mavoko.
If you go to Mavoko, you will get your local school that has been built through CDF funds, and the local kids from that village are going to that school. As a member of parliament, will you go to the gate and maybe start being a watchman to decide this kid your father didn't vote for me, don't come with this one? Right. You know, once we put a public utility, it is open to the public, and that is what the CDF is doing. What I'm just telling you, it is the only fund that is very thin on recurrent expenditure and thick on developmental expenditure.
The feeling is that as long as the Schedule 4 has separated the functions, national government and county function, that is where Kenyans are.
I think you are also not getting.
We've understood.
NGCDF, may I clarify something?
Yes.
NGCDF is part of the national funds. It is not funds for county government. That's why it is called National Government CDF. It is funds that are meant for the
grant
by the national government.
But what is the role of the MP when you go back to the constitution?
Fair enough.
Yes.
Quite a heated debate, not just here, but of course we saw members of parliament.
Maybe my advice to Wamae, next time don't go for a running mate. Just become an MP.
All right.
I had tried in 2017.
Let's talk of the security situation in the country as well. We have seen cases of mugging in the capital. Last week, but one, we saw the banditry attacks, which seemingly is becoming an irritating menace to deal with. Justina, we have had CSs, we have had the Kenyan government give ultimatums to bandits and banditry attacks, indicating that the government wants to firmly deal with bandits, but that has not been happening.
My feeling is that bandits, it takes me back to Kibaki's time when they went to Mount Elgon. So I don't know whether we want the government to be forceful, and then again I think the government's hands are tied because they also bring in the issue of human rights issue. So the question is, what do Kenyans want the government to do? Because when the government acts, they are told that there's a human rights issue. However, they also say, what I hear is that even the leaders, local leaders, also have a stake in the bandit situation. You know, cattle rustling is a lucrative business. So where does that leave the common mwananchi in terms of insecurity? Of course, the government has said that they're going to be firm on them, but I think firmness is not just word of mouth. Firmness should be boots on the ground. That is my feeling.
Boots on the ground, Justina says. Mheshimiwa, we have seen bandits well armed, which begs the question, who arms these bandits?
Yeah, maybe before that, I have a different view on what actually should be done to bandits. I think we have used force for long. It is time that we try something else, because the problems that bandits are causing to this country is not measurable. It is too huge, and it displaces our whole population. My thinking was these areas there are very few areas that are prone to banditry in Kenya. We should focus on opening up those areas so that if it is the issue of roads, we make sure that we open it up, we develop more roads in that area, we give them water, we give them all amenities so that at least they can see the light. And we also have to do a lot of development of capacity, because some of this banditry is as a result of cultural norms. You know when maybe, for example, in Pokot, when you are going for an engagement in Pokot and you are told that the dowry is maybe 60 cows or 90 cows, so you can imagine a youth who wants to marry who has only one cow. So what they'll do is that they will regroup themselves and go for stealing in the other communities, the communities' cows, purposely to raise the dowry. So some of these cultures, we should educate our people that these are cultures that needs to be done away with. If you want a girl, let it be free. Why all this business of paying cows left, right, and center?
Mheshimiwa, when you say we try something else, is negotiation part of it?
Yeah, it's a negotiation part of it. Because what the terrain, you know, those guys, they are used to the terrain, they are used to everything. You send our policemen, they are foreign in those areas. These guys have been using guns since they were 12 years, and they know the terrain. And you have seen, and we have been in this thing for long, trying to use force, but we can't manage. Maybe what we need to do is to enable this population to see light. You get, so that they can be told they can do something else that is not banditry.
All right, let's move from that question. Justina, a government in power 2 months, many would argue an opposition equally taking its rightful place in our fledgling democracy. What is the situation of the opposition in Kenya now? Some would say it's weak.
In fact, I saw Kenyans saying, why is Baba not talking about the current situation? But I think I heard what they said when the government was taken by Kenya Kwanza. They said that they do not want the government to fail, so they're giving them time. So my feeling is that they're giving them time so that they're not seen that they're agents of doom.
You are ideally supposed to be part of the opposition, aren't you?
Yes, ideally.
Given that your party did not.
Ideally. But what we are saying is that the government has requested us to give them time, given that they got into a government and realized the ground was different. So maybe also opposition is thinking, let us give this government time, let them do their own thing so that they don't blame us that we are the ones who are an impediment to their performance. So that is why they are keeping quiet for now. And 2 months in an African setting is a little time. So I think government needs more time.
It's of interest, Justina, of the language you use. You say they. You are the former running mate of a party that wanted to be in power. Are you part of the opposition?
You know, in Kenya, when you look, all politics is local. Kenyan politics, you look at opposition by the numbers that opposition got and the forerunners. So for us, we were still behind there. So we are giving the bigger opposition time. We are letting them be the main opposition. So us, we were a minute percentage in terms of opposition. So the bigger opposition is the one that should be seen to be speaking.
Many would argue, Justina, that does not stop you from critiquing the government when it needs to be critiqued.
And we are critiquing in our own small ways, like I'm telling Mheshimiwa what the ground is saying. So that is part of criticizing.
Fair enough. Mheshimiwa, the opposition in the country. We have seen your party make inroads to get some members of the opposition. I think Kalonzo Musyoka was persuaded to come and form the government with the president. How is the situation of the opposition in your view in the country?
I think in my view, the current opposition is in a state of quagmire. They seem not to know whether to go right, whether to go left, whether to go forward, whether to go back. And in that state, it's actually necessitated by where they came from. You know, the handshake government. Most of the current opposition were in the handshake. And I think they were used to the government until right now, they don't know what to do in the opposition. So if you find in our small talks, because we are in parliament with them, and when they talk, everyone wants to join the government. So it is the weakest opposition that we have for this period of 5 years, because everybody is trying to see how they can join. And you can see there, in fact, there is more in opposition. Like look at the problems ODM are facing with Jubilee. You get? And this year, there is an Yala elections that are coming, it will split them more. So next time you'll now find differences between Wiper and ODM. So there will be all manner of fragments within the opposition until by the time maybe within 1 year, you will not know which one is supposed to be opposition. But I'm seeing a sense maybe going forward, the only leaders who will remain in opposition are ODM. But I can tell you, Jubilee, they are more to our side than the opposition. I think they don't. You know, sometimes when you march...
Interesting. When you say your side, you mean Jubilee potentially joining the Kenya Kwanza matrix? The
way I'm seeing them behaving is that they are more comfortable with Kenya Kwanza than ODM.
So Babu Owino was correct when he said there was a long con, you know?
All right, and as we wind up because of the interest of time, I think, Justina, many would agree with me to the build-up of the 9th of August election, to the presidential debate. Many saw you outstanding, not just in the debates, but in the articulation of what you wanted to do for the country should you have been elected. You resigned from your party. What next politically for Justina Wamae?
I'm still scouting, the environment. But one thing I'm telling Kenyans is that elections are over. Let us give the government of the day time to deliver. So for now, I will not say what next because I do not know what is next. But the most important thing is that Kenyans, let us give the government of the day time to deliver so that at least when we are asking them questions, they'll be saying, we are given time, we failed to deliver, or we delivered.
Given a chance to be part of the government, would you?
I would not refuse because serving the government or serving your nation is the highest honor. I'm a patriotic Kenyan, so given an opportunity, I would serve. But there are other ways of serving, the country, criticizing, giving opinions. So there are other ways besides being in government.
I think I invite her to apply the CAS position.
Thank you, Mheshimiwa. David Kiplagat is Soy Member of Parliament. Justina Wamae is the former running mate of the Roots Party presidential ticket. Thank you for your time tonight.
But you're sending us home without one discussion.
All right.
Security. I met some camera people, some people who carry, content creators, and they told me they are afraid of even shooting in Nairobi. So what I think is that the insecurity challenge should have the youth-led approach to it. Every community knows the thief. Kila mtu anajua the thief in their community. So first the community needs to be told that produce your thieves or manage your thieves. So that this conversation should be a youth-led approach, the burning passion towards ensuring that there is security. Once we involve the youth, I believe besides being very forceful, we can try and negotiate with them, make them feel that they are part of this country. Because as it is, they're asking, why should I go to school and I don't have a job? Of course, being unemployed is not just justification to be a thief. But I think government should look at the approach of involving these youths to ensure that there is security.
I think the problem in security is partly because of the I can say the reorganization that is currently happening is, very well, after the elections, because most of the security operators had been weaponized, and after elections, when they are come lost, I think they were in shock. You remember the IG resigned, the Kinoti resigned, and everybody was like in a state where they didn't know each other. But now I think the things are in order. We have a new IG, we have a new DCI post, and there was a whole meeting that was done today, and strategies, and the Nairobi region, there is reorganization that has been announced by the minister, and I think starting tomorrow you will see things rolling up.
What of Justina's input of putting the young people at the heart of dealing with this menace?
That is community policing. I think it's something that should be encouraged.
All right, Mheshimiwa David Kiplagat, Soy Member of Parliament, Justina Wamae, former running mate of the Roots Party presidential ticket. Thank you for your time once again. That brings us to the end of tonight's edition of Pandits Night. I'm Abubakar Abdullahi. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. We are officially back. See you next Monday, God willing, tonight of all nights.